Right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, happy new week. In this episode of the People's Mirror, we just want to detail or put before the mirror actions of politicians that was witnessed over the weekend, and that has a big reflection politically, either on the 27th of this month in the by-elections or in the main election come 2027. And over the 1 week, ladies and gentlemen, politicians were moving both individually and in cohorts. And so we first start with this cohort called the United Opposition. And the reason we're putting them before the mirror is because of the growing anxiety that exists in this particular cohort ahead of the day that they're both jointly going to sit down and agree on one particular candidate to become the flag bearer. Now, first, we want to put before the mirror their own individual actions over the past 1 week. And then after we put their individual actions and political moves over the past 1 week, we detail to you that particular part on what we see or foresee will happen on the D-Day when they sit down to decide on one particular individual to carry their mantle. If you start with Karua, Martha has been missing for quite some time, maybe on professional engagements, but in the last joint meeting of the United Opposition when they were all together in the Muturi's launch of his book called Fight for Order, Karua was loudly missing. Now you see, this is very interesting because during the PLP launch, all of them were there, including Muturi. So we are not making much into Karua's absence in that particular book launch, and we are excusing it for being one that can be professionally excused if something else held down Martha. Then take a look at Eugene Wamalwa. Eugene Wamalwa is having his focus so much on Malava right now. The United Opposition have agreed that they are fronting single candidates in certain places like Malava and Mbeere North. And so Malava has had the DCP party Edgar surrendering his interest to Panyako to become the individual that is the United Opposition's main candidate in that area. This puts Eugene Wamalwa's party in a place of focus right now, that whereas he might want to build up his prominence ahead of the main election in 2027, first he has something to handle and deal with right now, and that is the 27th by-election. So we might say that Eugene's arrangement ahead of the major election has been curtailed with his focus in Malava election right now, and we hope to see that after Malava's win or lose, now Eugene Wamalwa will be actively involved in the national chase for power ahead of 2027. Of course, this particular by-election is important to him, because winning this particular by-elections for Eugene himself means that he will have a bigger voice, not only in the United Opposition as a core principle that has delivered his backyard, but also within the DAP Kenya itself, where there are infights between him and Natembeya right now on who should have the overall control of that party. So that much is where Eugene's focus is. And then you think of a gentleman called Muturi, who recently brought all these core principles together. For Justin, it's also another interesting one. Justin's focus is on Mbeere North by-election, just like Eugene's is on Malava. These are 2 points that matter so much to the government and to the United Oppositions equally, and we have detailed that in a lot of episodes, both at the Civic Lens and here at the People's Mirror. And so we see that Mbeere North's determination means a lot for Justin Muturi, because the previous candidate holding that particular position was a Democratic Party candidate who left to join UDA in the government, and now that particular candidate is beating Muturi, or trying to beat Muturi in that particular region with a UDA candidate. So it's a lot for him. He has to consolidate the clan support, he has to consolidate the ground support, and they have to diffuse the involvement of the UDA in that region to deliver that win to the Democratic Party. And amidst it, he still even has time to launch his own book, Fight for Order, to detail his journey in the rise of power in the Kenyan political scene. So for JB Muturi, his focus right now really is just like Eugene, Mbeere North. And until he delivers in Mbeere North is when we can now detail JB Muturi's interest in the national seat and his journey towards the chase of the national power. If you're joining the People's Mirror for the first time, you can see we're a very small channel. Please see the subscribe button. Now let's look at another gentleman called Kalonzo Musyoka. It would be steady to say that Kalonzo is now gaining a different trajectory in his political speech. And he's not just talking as a member of the United Opposition anymore. He's trying to position himself himself as a national leader, tapping into the orphanage gap of Raila's backyard with the Joey statements that now he makes everywhere, in the beginning or at the end of each of his speeches. At first, he did it at the Justin Muturi's book launch. We thought just because he came from Kango Kajaramogi, it was live in his mind. But if we detail, which we'll detail shortly, if you take a look at his speech yesterday in Lukenya, then it narrows down the same script, that now he identifies with the spirit of Raila Odinga as the source inspiration that he has politically and that he has to obey ahead of the 2027 major election.
These are difficult times for us in the region. But when I went to lay a wreath at the mausoleum of our late brother Raila Odinga, I could not help but imagine the struggles that you have come through. And so I want to greet you as we used to be greeted by the young ones with Raila Amolo Odinga. Remember those days when you say Raila tialala. Kumbukeni hiyo, Raila tialala. Ria. Well, Raila tialala. Now, I've just come out there and the story has changed. And it is Joey, the buffalo. Joey. Joey. You need to carry a spear with you so you can make a bit of sense out of that. But students of Lukenya University, you are truly honored to be able to host such a distinguished leadership in our continent. And more particularly, the chief guest today. I bring you greetings from one who was a fourth president like you, the Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. I was speaking to him as I was driving in to Lukenya, and he was so excited. He leaves the country tomorrow, and he asked me to convey his message of welcome to you. And there's so much, again, as Mheshimiwa Jessica Balu, Member of Parliament for this area, you did make some very interesting comparison between our chief guest and yours truly. That you are born the same year, believe it or not. But Mr. President was born in February and I was born in December. They went on to found Botswana Patriotic Front. And we are members of Wiper Patriotic Front. And then you have come visiting. I hope I'll go visiting. In fact, my plan says by Wednesday I'll land in Gaborone. So I hope you'll be home by then and to be able to visit. So let me make this submission in writing, because if I don't, my brother PLO Lumumba will have carried the day.
If you take a look at how even he dressed in the Pan-African conference that was being held in Lukenya, he had the fedora that Raila is known to be previously wearing and was even put on his coffin on the D-Day. So Kalonzo is trying to project himself as a national leader beyond the united opposition. And is doing this in hope that when they select him as the national leader, then he will leave to, the aspirations of not only the supporters of the united oppositions, but Kenyans at large. Then comes in Matiang'I. Fred is busy walking in churches and in technocratic spaces and giving speeches. And Fred's speech is not really political, but a reminder of what happened then. I remember on his speech that he was making in Limuru, Fred was reminding the congregants in Limuru, in Pastor T's church, that really they should shy away from identifying politicians with churches, because he was saying it's very wrong for a politician to camouflage under church and seek political power under that camouflage, only to turn out not to live the doctrines, the characters and the requirement of that church.
What is good for our country? I mean, what's good for our country cannot be what only one person knows. I can't know alone what is good for our country, and no leader can know what is good for our country. What is good for our country should be what we all know is good for our country, and we can discuss and have conversations about it. That is why, someone responded to some message I tweeted last week and said, "You must remark my exams because I don't know whether I got the right day or you are too strict. But you see, the truth of the matter is that we must do the right things. When we do things right, everything goes on right. What we've stood for and what we wanted to do then, as we would like to do now as we go forward, and that is essentially the platform that you have preached to us on this morning, is to live right, face the truth, and do the things that we need to do correctly. Do the right things. Reducing capitation for our schools, such as is happening now, by nearly 40%, I am in total agreement with you. If you want to destroy a country, destroy its education system. Some of the decisions that have been made and are being made are not right. So all of you wonderful people who are here, plus myself, are the ones to team up together and make the right decision for our country. No one is going to make it for us. All those countries that Pastor T has made reference to this morning, where he met the wise people in Korea, and where he met all these smart people in the UK, they were built by people who loved their country enough to do the right thing. We should also love our country enough to do the right thing as we go forward. That's why I would like to ask you, my brothers and sisters, across the spectrum of age, social responsibility, and etc., register to vote. Because when you do not vote, then you are not participating in taking the right decision for the country. Participate in the conversations on the future of our country. I love this wonderful man here called Pastor T. What you have said, church can participate in the affairs of the nation. There's nothing wrong. And participate meaningfully, truthfully, and I hope this time around in a manner that is also honest. I know the church in Kenya, part of the church in Kenya is hurting. At some time in 2022, even some clergy was standing up and saying, for the first time in history, the church has a candidate. Now, I don't know what the church is thinking about that candidate of theirs. I don't want to be claimed by the church if I can't live up to the principles of that church. I would not like, let me be very honest with you people. I would not like to be claimed by the church if I can't live up to the character and the philosophy of that church. So, and I'm not going to ask you to claim me. I want to just be honest and be as candid as this wonderful man of God here, Pastor T. Let's do what is right for our country, and the rest will follow. And for all of you, you are the ambassadors of truth, and you are the ambassadors of a good and wonderful Kenya.
And that was just a banter straight at President Ruto's 2022 election, which really said that he rode on the back of Mama Mboga, Boda Boda, and especially he rode on the back of religion to deliver his win as a president. So while Kalonzo is projecting a presidential outlook, Matiang'I is reminding the people on why they should not vote this regime again come 2027. What is Rigiji doing amidst all this? Big man Rigathi Gachagua is taking his time to build his DCP party, and while he's doing this, we detailed here the People's Mirror that he has now waived all nomination fees for the people that would want to vie as MCAs, as members of parliament, as members of senate, using the DCP party ticket, who are Gen Zs and millennials, and who have proven over a series or a quality amount of time that they are loyal to the DCP party. So they're all individually working on themselves and working on their regions. You could say that they all individually have been given different scripts to follow so that they can consolidate this power mass ahead of the decision that they will make in 2026. But that does not downplay the fact that anxiety keeps lingering in the midst of their meetings as they wonder who really will be given this particular title to become the flag bearer in the major elections in 2027. Our concern really is, if this day comes to pass and now the united opposition has agreed on one particular presidential candidate, is the ship going to hold or is the flock going to be dispersed? And that is the anxiety that exists within the united opposition. Each of these candidates is marvelously trying to position themselves as national leaders, save for the candidates that are boldly thinking on the by-elections that they have to deliver in the 27th by-election for their agreement as a united opposition. The rest of the principals are putting their focus ahead of 2027 and even asking their voters to support them individually, not as a united opposition ahead of that particular 2027 elections. So the anxiety that lingers beneath is the only thing that keeps the united united opposition now, and the only thing that has the effect of dividing the united opposition when the D-Day arrives and they have perhaps agreed upon Eugene Wamalwa as the presidential candidate or Martha Karua as the flag bearer. So here are the mirrors, ladies and gentlemen. That is the actions that have individually occurred out of the united opposition's co-officials, and that is the anxiety that lingers beneath, and we keep our mirrors focused on them until the day that they will make the determination on whether or not this ship will sail or the flock will be dispersed, if that decision is made in 2026, just a year ahead of 2027.